sheets of plastic to force clients to keep their distance, but many employees remain fearful. This worker wants face masks to be mandatory for all, but faced with a shortage, many cashiers are forced to make do as best they can, while others aren't protected at all. In this supermarket in Paris, staff only have gloves to stay safe.
Demander aux gens de faire des efforts sans leur fournir le minimum pour les rassurer, à un moment, quelle est la priorité?
One French supermarket chain, Auchan Group, will be paying 65,000 of its employees a €1,000 bonus as a thank you for all their hard work during the crisis.
Over to Italy, where the death toll from the coronavirus continues its relentless rise. The country announced 651 dead in 24 hours alone. The Italian government has now made a direct appeal to the Defense Secretary, Mark Esper, for US military aid in combating the disease. Other countries, including Russia and Cuba, have started sending aid to the country. Here's France 24's Camille Delec with that story.
From Russia with love. That's the message of these trucks carrying medical equipment bound for Rome.
По указанию министра обороны Российской Федерации в кратчайшие сроки была создана группировка сил и средств и сформирована оперативная группа для оказания помощи Итальянской Республике в борьбе с коронавирусной инфекцией.
Russia sent mobile disinfection units capable of sanitizing vehicles, buildings and public spaces, as well as medical equipment such as test kits to the worst-hit areas of Italy. 8 medical brigades, including virologists with first-hand experience of fighting African swine fever and Ebola, also made the trip. Meanwhile, in Milan, 36 Cuban doctors, 15 nurses and a logistics expert arrived to lend their expertise. Cuban doctors have already helped fight the virus in a number of other countries, including Venezuela and Nicaragua. In Havana on Saturday, they were at a swearing-in ceremony where they mentally prepared for the challenges ahead.
Como médico me siento como cuando fui al ébola, muy inspirado, muy emocionado por dar algo de la medicina cubana al mundo a aquellas personas que tanto lo necesitan.
China has also sent medical supplies as Italy bears the brunt of the current outbreak of coronavirus, losing over 1,000 patients in a single weekend.
Now to Spain, where plans have been announced to extend the country's state of emergency for another 15 days. This as the number of COVID-19 deaths soar. The bill would mean that people would be housebound until April the 11th. Now, another measure announced by the Spanish government is that 9 hotels are to be converted into clinics to care for less serious cases. Meanwhile, reports have emerged that the country's deputy prime minister, that's Carmen Calvo, was hospitalized on Sunday with respiratory infection. She's now waiting on test results from her coronavirus. Turning our attention to the US, where political disagreements in Washington are continuing to stall economic relief this Monday. Republicans and Democrats are locking horns over the makeup of a COVID-19 stimulus package. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, finally acknowledging the gravity of the situation, declared a, quote, war against the disease while ordering thousands of emergency hospital beds set up at coronavirus hotspots. Let's take a listen to the US president speaking earlier.
In addition to large quantities of supplies, I've also directed FEMA to supply the following: 4 large federal medical stations with 1,000 beds for New York, 8 large federal medical stations with 2,000 beds for California, and 3 large federal medical stations and 4 small federal medical stations with 1,000 beds for the state of Washington.
Donald Trump there speaking. Now, in Iran, without an official lockdown, the number of those infected is very much on the rise. It currently stands at 23,049, with 127 new deaths, making it one of the hardest hit countries in the world, of course, after Italy. The country's president, Hassan Rouhani, meanwhile, said earlier this Monday that US sanctions have hampered its efforts to combat coronavirus. However, the country's supreme leader, for his part, that's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has refused American assistance, citing a conspiracy theory claiming that it could be man-made by Washington itself. It's time now for the latest business news, and we'll be crossing over to France 24's Catherine Bennett from our business team. Catherine, thank you so much for being with us. Global markets are still very much fighting this uphill battle against the effects of the pandemic. Tell us more.
That's absolutely right, Sanam. So it was red across the board in Asia as markets closed earlier, with Seoul's Kospi down over 5%, the Hang Seng Index also down almost 5%, and China's mainland stocks doing a little better, but still also on that downward spiral. Japan's Nikkei is actually the only index that was spared, ending on a high of 2%. Over in Europe, we're looking at much the same pattern there. European markets tumbling throughout trading across the morning. The FTSE closed down 4.33%. The CAC 40 and Milan fell almost 4%. And Frankfurt's DAX also continuing that trend, dropping over 3%.
Now, Catherine, governments across the world are taking this do whatever they can approach to mitigate the financial impact of the coronavirus. And of course, Germany's got this particularly ambitious plan.
Yes, so Germany is actually really ripping up the fiscal rules book. Absolutely, as you say, taking a do whatever it takes approach with plans for a stimulus package that could be the equivalent to about 10% of the country's GDP. Now, today, Germany is set to pass through its Bundestag a €156 billion supplementary budget, while also expecting a drop of €33.5 billion in tax revenue this year. And as part of that budget, the government is creating a €50 billion hardship fund, which is aiming to tide over self-employed people and small businesses while this pandemic rages on. The country is also creating a €500 billion bailout fund that will take stakes in companies that have been adversely affected by the virus. Now, the emergency plan should also provide €3.5 billion, and this is a sort of direct fund that can be used directly to combat the virus for things like protective suits and masks, repatriating German holidaymakers who are still abroad, and of course channeling money towards developing a vaccine. Now, all of this is actually quite surprising from Germany, which normally has a very buttoned-up policy of no new borrowing and keeping all of their budgets very tightly balanced. And the country's finance minister has been criticised for the plan, with newspapers referring to him as the king of debt or the man sitting on a mountain of debt. But he's actually defended his policy, saying that it's only because of Germany's historically very tight purse strings that the country can actually now justify this type of big spending in a crisis situation like this.
Catherine Bennett there from our business team, joining us via Skype from her home here in Paris. Thanks for being with us. Now, the International Olympic Committee is finally considering a postponement of the Games and has given itself a deadline of 4 weeks to make a decision. This as various countries have stepped up pressure to warn that they won't send their athletes to Tokyo 2020. Among them, the US, Canada, France and Spain.
This is the stadium intended for the opening ceremony of the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games on the 24th of July. But amid growing concern over the coronavirus pandemic, it's not certain the Games will go ahead, with the Japanese Prime Minister saying a delay is inescapable if they can't be held in full.
IOC の判断は、私が申し上げました完全な形での実施という方針に沿うものであり、仮にそれが困難な場合には、アスリートの皆さんのことを第一に考え、延期の判断を行わざるを得ないと考えています。
Pressure to postpone the event is mounting. Canada was the first country to announce it wouldn't send a team this summer, but in 2021 instead. Australia, Poland, Brazil and Slovenia have also called for a date change, as well as the president of World Athletics. The IOC said the fate of the 2020 Games would be decided within the next 4 weeks.
We said we will continue to be very realistic in our analysis. Everybody realized that there we have still more than 4 months to go.
The Olympic torch arrived in northern Japan last Friday from Greece, and the country's Olympic minister insisted the torch relay would start on Thursday as planned. Organisers have asked people not to line the route where the flame begins its journey in Fukushima Prefecture.
Well, that's it from us at this hour. Thank you for watching France 24. Do stay tuned.
The world is ever-changing. The news doesn't wait. That's why at France 24, we'll always be there to help make sense of world events. For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what. France 24, with you everywhere, all the time. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
In the federal state of Salzburg, in the west of Austria, organic farming accounts for half of all cultivated land. And it's here in this region that the family of Sebastian Herzog set up a farm 300 years ago. Today, he produces milk as well as beef and pork. Everything's bio-certified, a big advantage, he says.
1 liter of milk produced through conventional farming currently sells at between 37 and 39 euro cents in Austria, compared to 50 cents for organic milk, which is quite a difference. We also get higher subsidies for biofarming. Being an organic farmer makes me happy because this way we can do our part to protect species and biodiversity. In these times of debate about climate change, I think organic farming is a good answer from the agricultural sector.
A form of farming Sebastian Herzog enjoys introducing to the numerous visitors. His family also offer guest rooms.
Here's one of our double rooms. We rent it out at 500 euros a week.
Linking agriculture and tourism, a model that's popular in Austria. For bio-producers, it's added security.
Tourism represents 40% of our total revenue. Combined with agriculture, it allows me to have a relatively stable income. And I now believe that one line of business could not work without the other. On the one hand, tourists want to spend their holidays on a fully functioning farm. And on the other, the tourism income allows easier investment in agriculture.
The main opening for Austrian producers? Broad distribution. Since the 1990s, supermarkets have had their own bio brands, and today the offering is broad. More than 1,000 products for this brand, from sandwich spread to cheese and coffee, an approach that has brought organic farming to a wider public.
Having our own line of organic products has helped such goods become widely accessible throughout Austria. Obviously, that creates big opportunities for farmers.